What I'm going to show you is the experience in the Netherlands, and that's now over something like 25 years. And so where you are now, you have to see that we are now, let's say, 20 to 25 years later. And we have been giving speeches in a number of countries, and we would like to state the first thing is actually what is screening, and it's already has been hit on in the previous speakers, but for us it's very clear that screening should be not only an apparatus of shifting, of sieving. Here you see the population. Here you see the population is normal population and abnormal population after one round. And this is what most of people would consider screening. The problems arise if everyone recognizes that there are still some abnormals in the so-called normal population, and there are still also normals in the abnormal population. You have to deal with that. It's more or less, you have a screened population and you have a recalled population. You don't have a diagnosis yet if you are really in screening. So that's important. But what is much more important is what we see now. The figures that you saw just here from Saudi Arabia are first round figures. And this is what you will find in the first round. You have much more pre-symptomatic disease. And you go for a first screening round, and everyone is happy. And everyone is happy because you find so much breast cancer. But actually this is not where you are looking for. You're looking for the smaller tumors. So now you get the interval. In the interval, the left-ins will become symptomatic, and they will be picked out, and you leave. Now you have the start of a screening system. Here you can start really early detection, and this is what you should to be continued for many, many, many years. So, what we mean about screening is screening of breast cancer. It's the most misused word in the world, screening, but we mean screening for breast cancer, mammographic, digital, organized. And organized is very strict in this sense. Some facts you already saw that, so 1.5 million women, 300 deaths annually, and here you see the Glomocan image, and it looks like a Western disease. But if you look very closely, it's the incidence is it's a Western disease, but mortality is not a Western disease. Breast cancer mortality is not specific breast for the Western countries, so it's a worldwide problem. Why were we so early in the Netherlands? Here we are. This is the incidence in Europe. It's much, much, much higher than wherever in the world. We have the highest, one of the highest incidence, somewhere around the same as Belgium and parts of the UK. So that's the reason why there was also very early interest in screening programs in the Netherlands. Most of people say, well, if you start screening, you start finding cancers, and then you have this. You have an enormous rise in incidence, but at a specific moment, it will disappear. I'm so sorry. This is what happened in the Netherlands. This is 1910 in mortality of breast cancer. And this is 1990 when we started screening. Here, at this moment, 65% 5-year survival in Saudi Arabia. When we started, it was 50% survival in the Netherlands in 1990. Here we see the age pyramid. The problem that you have depends also on the age distribution. This is the age pyramid when we started in 1975 with our screening system. And this is what's happening now. We have an elderly population, and elderly population have much more breast cancer. But these women are healthy. Screening is about health and not about disease. 80% will never see something of their tests. They only go once in a while. For 5 minutes in 2 years in the Netherlands, they go for a bus. And that's everything what's into it. Their sisters will be saved. Most of them will never have any harm about screening. So don't overexaggerate that screening does so much harm. We will grow. We do now on a yearly basis 1 million women. And it will be 1.5 million in a couple of years. So we can handle that, that's no problem. This is Saudi Arabia. It's a much more normal build-up of the country. You have a very young population. But the age distribution, as you saw just, is completely different. You should adjust your system to a younger age group. Okay, well, what was the history anyhow? The history was, it came from Germany, a person with the name Ernst Krokowski. He was very, very patient. He accounted there was an enormous relation between metastasis and the size of the tumor. And since you are all radiologists, or most of you are radiologists, that's why we are in. We are trying to find the breast cancer as early as possible. We don't do diagnostics on the axilla. We try to find the tumor as small as possible, and that saves life. Of course, you have fast-growing tumors, normal-growing tumors. I'm so sorry about this. So here we have fast-growing tumors, slow-growing tumors, but also very slow-growing tumors. But still, their only opportunity is to get them as early as possible. So that's the solution. And in the Netherlands, after 71 in New York, we started in 1975 with 2 pilots, like here in Medina, and in the eastern part of the country with small pilots. We have a population screening act in the Netherlands, and you're not allowed to screen without a permit from the government. And in June 1987, the Health Council of the Netherlands said, well, mammographic screening is currently the only cost-effective screening, so it was in 1987, for breast cancer if we meet certain criteria on organization and financing. And since that time, they have been financing every year breast cancer screening. And so you have to have the commitment of your government. And so we build up a screening program with a target age. In those days, normal, we should go younger now, from 50 to 75. 75 was later implemented, and screening interval of 2 years. So, small information about organization. Here you have the Ministry of Health, Welfare and Sport. It's free for the Dutch population. So they're involved, and you have here 2 independent audit and quality organizations, and the right ones are we are for the medical quality audit, the continuous, and the numbers are being done in Rotterdam by another group. We're working very close together. We're a member of each other's teams. Completely digital, independent system from hospitals, a PACS system, a nationwide PACS and information system. The only paper that we use is for information to the clients, to the women. So the target population is 2.3 million, and we do 1.2 million invitations per year. We have a lot of breast cancer patients, and they are not invited anymore in screening. So some results about the analog period. We did 14 million invitations to 3 million women, a yearly growth of 16%, attendance 80%, and the realized interval between screening was 24 to 20.5 months. Detection was, we detected over 56,000 screen-detected breast cancers in those years, of which 5,000 ductal carcinomas in situ. And 70% of the invasive carcinomas were less than 2 centimeters. This is the macro figures. Of course, we have all the figures, everything that you can imagine. We have the figures about first round, second round, etc. The lymph nodes has influence on the survival, limited, but that there is influence on the survival. 70% of the invasive tumors was lymph node negative, a much higher rate in the subsequent rounds. The program sensitivity, which is different from mammographic sensitivity, is 70%, is over 70%, which is considered for an analog screening reasonable, normal. And for the women over 70 years, it's over 81. So this is a little bit dull perhaps for some of you, but these are performance indicators. If you try to monitor the screening system, you want to know nearly on a daily basis how things going. So how's the attendance going? In the Netherlands, the attendance is 82%. And what do I show here? I show here the first rounds in all those years. Dark blue are the people who are screened, and light blue are the people who are being invited. So approximately 20% don't comply to the screening invitation. So, another point, the recall rate. Well, some people think that we are crazy in the Netherlands that we have such a low recall rate. We have a much higher recall rate for the first round. We have a recall rate of 4%, which is more or less mean in Europe, but a much, much lower recall rate in the subsequent rounds. Why is that? The reason for that is that we have a very good organization and we are very well trained. It's not necessary to recall so much to have the same detection. We always have the prior rounds under our hands if we screen. It's a matter of organization. Detection 5.5 in those years. And you see here a result which might be of interest to you. You have to recall a lot of women more for some slight increase of detection. We do that intentionally. We asked the radiologists the last years to increase their recall. And you can see the results now. All because of the stage shift. This is the difference between a screen group and a symptomatic group. Here you see T2 plus, 60% in the symptomatic group, 70% in our screening. So this is very simple. That's why screening works, and especially for radiologists, it should be important that you realize just find those small tumors, like here. Here we see what happened in the Netherlands the last year when we did something which I'll show you later on. We started here with real digitization. But here we started with higher recall. It became from 4.9 up to 6.0 at this moment, with a very low recall rate. Very high recall rate is not necessary. Mortality. Mortality is the only reason why you screen. And here we have a graph that now and then gives a lot of debate in the Netherlands. Why is that? That's because here we have a graph without screening, and that's been calculated by a computer program. And this is what we've been observing. So here we started screening. Here we started screening, and that's what happened. Is that proof? Well, not for all the epidemiologists, but there's quite another proof is that we started in a later moment with the age group of 70 to 75, and see what happens here. The mortality dropped enormously after we started the screening, much faster than the other group. Why is that? We were building on an existing infrastructure for the older group. So it was a sort of big bang start of screening of older women. And you see an immediately decline of the mortality here. Much, much faster than in the other group. So that's the reason why we have a very strong opinion that screening works, and it's not necessarily that you have to recall everyone. Cost. Some of you might be interested. We pay per screen €53 in 2007. We digitized the whole bunch. We had to add €4, and the quality monitoring costs is approximately €5. So this is what happened with the price. Of course, the total price of screening went up because we did more women, but the mean price per screening unit stayed stable. This is corrected for inflation. So what do we earn? Will we earn per year life saved? It's approximately €2,200 per year life saved in breast cancer screening program. Approximately the same for colon cancer, much more for cervical cancer, and we have a limit. We look a little bit like the Scots. We don't like to spend money too much. So here you see that the Dutch limit is 20,000. What do we spend in the Netherlands to healthcare? Well, a lot of money. Now approaching 90 billion euros per year. Somewhere 25 to hospital and medical specialists. Billion. And now we're spending only 200 million on the total prevention, and we're spending 60 million in 2012. So it's 0.3 of the total budget for hospitals. So it's only a splinter with a very effective mean. You should give this information to your government because it's very effective. This is the cost of the healthcare. We should be careful that it's not becoming a disease itself. But not for screening. Screening is not very expensive. So digitization might be of interest to radiologists. It was a revolution. We do high volume screening. Was it good enough? You know, we started very early with some pilots. This is a graph I have to explain. This is the build-up of the screening of the Netherlands in the analog phase. And this is the digital. This is the digital area. This represents, with these first rounds, 1.5 million screens. And we can compare that with the analog area. It was an enormous process. So here you see the Netherlands. It's not a very large country, but we have 17 million inhabitants. And here you see a national PAX with a glass fiber connection, everything attached to everything, especially for breast cancer screening. We had to train 550 technicians and 150 radiologists, all special, dedicated training for the digitization, and a total of 1,000 people who use the system. 1,000 people who do 1 million screens per year. We have 65 mammographic units, 8 fixed locations. The fixed location has now more mammographic units than one, but we have 57 mobile units. That's a large enterprise because we do 5,000 women per day, every year, again and again, again and again. It only works if you can get the population back to the screening. The total budget for the project was 70 million. So the evaluation of this 1.5 million against the analog, the digital recall rate went up significantly, but there's a learning curve. The detection of DCIS was almost doubled, especially in younger women, which is pretty relevant. Don't believe those people who said it's only overdiagnosis. And we found significantly more invasive ductal carcinoma of the very small kind. As a result of that, significant less T2 plus, and the lymph node stayed stable, but I have to make a remark about that. It looks like that we don't influence the lymph node status, but in this period we saw the sentinel node procedure. Okay, I'm pretty close to the end, Mrs. Chairman. You see here you see the learning curve of the digital screens. Here you see the predictive value became higher, and here you see the learning curve I showed. So the general conclusion of digitization was improved screening performance, more efficiency, and a cost stable. Some remarks about the mortality decline and screening. Here we see the influence of the start of the screening and what happened here. Most of the people say, well, there's something else. Well, we have a lot of opponents in Europe, not in the Netherlands, but in Europe. Well, we analyzed it very, very closely, and this is what happened if you get everything together. Before the start of the screening, if you consider the screening as one big bang, before the start of the screening, every year you saw an incline of 0.3% of mortality, and after the screening you saw a decline of 1.7. So that's pretty convincing that screening works. I'll skip this. This has to do with the influence of chemotherapy in relation to screening. The part of which can be contributed to screening is larger. It's much larger in the older population, and of course there is no real figures. If you compare women who are screened and non-screened, then the chance of dying of breast cancer for women who are not screened is 50% higher. Dus if you comply to the system, your chance of dying of breast cancer is 50% lower. This has been proven in the Netherlands, but again and again and again everywhere in the world. Last points of discussion: the Gotcha, the Cochrane. They leave out the most successful randomized trials. I don't have enough time, but I have enough time for this. There was a big row in the UK. Independent review by people who never published about breast cancer screening, and it's recently been published, the UK review, and the highlights. The highlights is significant benefit. 1,300 people prevented mortality at 70 years. Overtreatment is an offer that many women will feel worth accepting, and there's no reason to stop the program. End of discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, there are harms and there are benefits. And if you organize a screening system, you should be aware of that. And you should take the harms out as far as possible. We will skip the overdiagnosis and the false positives, but it's a problem that we can handle, especially the false positive. We're building now a system that the false positive, especially the virus 0, we only recognize in screening virus 0 and virus 4 and 5, that the virus 0 will be dealt with within 48 hours. My last conclusions. 35 years after the first pilot project and 22 years after the start of the population screening, screening in the Netherlands is a fact of life. Fear for breast cancer is diminished and not directly related to mortality. And I have to make a remark about your fear, about the recognized fear here for amputation. Most of the women don't get an amputation. 5-year survival is somewhere around 85. The 5-year survival of screen detected is near normal. The 5-year survival of screen detected tumors smaller than 15 millimeters is completely normal, is comparable to the background group. Effect on the mortality decline of the target population is significant, but it's the whole population, the screened and the non-screened, is over 30%. Figures from the Netherlands are national, very large, very detailed, and from open sources and available for everyone. And every year, at least 775, and it will grow up to 975, will prevent the deaths from screening. This is my last slide. Don't forget, 1 prevented death adds 16 years of life in the Netherlands. The system should be strictly controlled and limited cost, and the continuous monitoring, audit, and quality control is mandatory. Thank you very much for your attention. Are you meaning the discussion, the scientific discussion about the efficacy of screening programs? Yeah, we think it has some impact on the woman, but not very much. When there is a program on the television or in a newspaper, you hardly see any effect. We are a little bit afraid there will be gradually some effects, but until now there's hardly any effect. They consider it as a discussion in between scientists, and most of the people has the feeling that early detection would be a model that is okay, but still it might be disturbed by the ongoing debate, the eternal debate about the harms and the benefits of the screening. So when you start screening, it's very difficult to be completely open about the disadvantages, because the woman will have the impression that they have a real chance of being harmed by the screening, but there's so much, it's so little chance. But still, that's the problem. And in the beginning, and that was also the criticism, that the harms were, let's say, left out for the information to the public. Now, in 2012, that would be impossible. In those days, it was because of compliance, it was left out.
I have a question to Professor Heyten and Mr. Kalkin. When we talk about the interval cancer, incidence of interval cancer, this means we have to do all the clients again for the second round in order to calculate. But if they're not coming, they're not showing up like 50%, so I cannot calculate the interval cancer rate, right?
You have to connect the national cancer figures with your screening system. And you have to know the breast cancer cases which being found in hospitals, and you have to match this with your screening system. And so but it will take many years often. But it will be better and better and better with digitization. But that's the way we do it. We just connect the screening information system with the cancer information system of the Dutch Cancer Society. So you should have some national information system about malignancies.
And also you mentioned in your presentation that you instructed the radiologist after a while to increase the recall rate in order to get a smaller stage of cancer. Yes. And what's the limit of the allowed recall rate?
Well, we did extensive research on recall, and I can give you an hour lecture about that. But we think that 2% for the Netherlands will be okay. It will be a little bit higher, 2.5%, 3% on the whole. In the first round, we go up to 4 or 5%. In the subsequent rounds, we go. But we came from 1, and that was too low. And when we started, we say, well, okay, get up with screening. So we went to them and asked them to adjust their screening system, and they did. There's no doubt. If you ask a radiologist, just be a little bit more sharp, but not too much, then he will do it. In the Netherlands, they will do it. We don't have this medical legal problem. You know, not every woman who is missed isn't too big, will go to the law, to a judge. They won't sue us. They know that this is screening, and screening is not perfect.
Yeah.
So we, because we have a relative small group of 150 radiologists, we all know them. We can steer them a little bit. Of course, they are normal radiologists like you and myself, but we can say, okay, we did extensive research on this. And 2%, if you want to avoid one interval carcinoma, if you go much higher than 2%, you will have to make 282 false positives. This is the balance that you have to suit. This is overcalling, we think. So the optimal area is somewhere between 2 and 3 for the subsequent rounds.
Yeah.
First round is a different question.
I have just one last question. So to gauge the success program of a screening program, we emphasize a lot about the detection rate. But do you have enough time now to really look at the cure rate? I mean, you talked a little bit about the decrease of death rate, but do you have enough lead time bias, I guess, to see whether there is enough, you can gauge actually the success based on the cure rate?
Yes, but we of course we know that that lead time bias is of course a problem. But if you are working already for more than 20 years, that's not a problem anymore. So we know exactly what happens with the screen detected woman. They will hardly die from breast cancer. My own sister, she was detected by the screening, and I said, well, congratulations. The one reason you're not going to die from is from breast cancer. You know, that's the reason. She was 72, and she had a 4 millimeter invasive breast carcinoma. It's not a white dove. This is normal practice in the Netherlands. We don't see very much large tumors, and if there's one, it's a very fast growing. It's a nasty one. We will never save those women.
Those usually are younger patients.
Yeah.
Yes, most of them. Yes, most of them. Absolutely. Yeah.
My question to Professor Heyten. Thank you very much for your presentation and also answering your question. My question regarding the high-risk population for patients with BRCA1 and BRCA2, and also with patients who had previous irradiation, what is the recommended tool for screening for such patient? And the second part of the question, who should follow this patient? Radiologist, the screening program, or who is?
In the Netherlands, the guidelines are very clear. You start at 35 with yearly mammography, MR, physical examination, and ultrasound. The chance of having a false positive is 100% in your lifetime, but they accept that, and they are being followed up by the medical oncologist. But of course, in the Netherlands, and that is what you're going to see also here in Saudi Arabia, when you start screening on a large scale, surgeons and radiologists and pathologists has to work together. And immediately the standard of care goes up. I'm so sorry about the surgeons. I don't know if there is any surgeon here around, but the standard of care, because it becomes multidisciplinary, that's the effect of screening. It's a side effect, I know, but they have to work together. So they have multidisciplinary teams. I saw in your department a special room for that. That is in every hospital in the Netherlands obligatory. You don't comply to the guidelines if you don't have a multidisciplinary room, if you don't have a weekly multidisciplinary room. So it's of course a surgeon or a medical oncologist, to go to your question, that's the one who does the direct contact, or a nurse. Nowadays we have nurses, dedicated nurses, and it's all discussed in between in the multidisciplinary team.
So there is no rule for MRI breast for patient with high risk?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Everyone.
And how frequent patient had?
Once a year.